Hey everybody, anyone out there watching? It's me again, the Grey Man, Grey Maniacs Gather, and all that kind of spiel. And I'm joined by the Bride Man from yesterday's Cover Slingers Showdown, the low down dirty dog, Bill from Comic Mag Musings. He's like, was it? Is it Snidely Whiplash or whatever it is, or who's the guy who rides the 00 car in Wacky Races?
Oh yeah, that's Dick Dastardly, right?
Yeah,
and Muttley.
Yeah, definitely a bit of Dick Dastardly going on there.
Used to love that. Yeah, and they were in the biplane as well, where they'd always try to catch this pigeon.
Stop the pigeon! Stop the pigeon! Yeah. Nab him, grab him, stab him.
That's right.
Stop that pigeon now! Yeah.
And Muttley always wanted a medal in order to do something to save Dick Dastardly. He loved it. Yeah, great cartoon.
It was weird how they suddenly went from being like race car drivers to pigeon catchers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a man and dog of many talents, right?
Yeah.
You can't keep them down.
What was the idea behind it? It was a carrier pigeon carrying a message. Yeah. Were they German spies or something?
I think I'd have to look back on it. I think it was definitely Jackson Roy Kirk says, "Oh my, this guy again." I think he's talking about you, Gray Man. Yeah.
I think we're just talking about me here, surely. Talking about me. The comment refers it to still being about me, I think. Anyway, so we're discussing some comic book memories with you. 5 comic book memories, 5 comics that stuck with you in your brain, or somehow important to you in your life. So, do you want to do that? Are you going to do them chronologically as you remember them, or just going to?
Yeah, I think that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Comic Mag Mustard. Jackson Roy Kirk's misbehaving, Gray Man. I'd like to put that on the record, please.
Is he stalking you again, mate? Is he stalking you?
I think he's still angry about my thorough defeat of some of his favorite panel members yesterday.
that was disastrous. You've definitely got some money over to Matilda there. I know what's going on.
Well, that's why I needed her PayPal account information.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And I think because I won the week before, she was like, not going to give Gray any points. I think that's what it was. She doesn't want to show favoritism, even though she knew my comics were far superior. She like them, mate. No more smack. We'll save that for next week.
Absolutely.
What's your first
comic book memories?
Yeah.
So I've talked about this one before, but this would be my first one. I don't know if this is the first comic book I ever read. It's the first one I remember having read. And it's certainly the first one I remember purchasing at a store, although my mother purchased it. I think I bugged her at the grocery store enough to where just to shut me up, she went and bought that one. Mostly, I collected trading cards, sports cards, when I was growing up, because my older brother collected sports cards, and so I just kind of followed. I was heavily influenced by him. And so usually he would send me to the convenience store with enough money to buy him a Mountain Dew and a candy bar. And there'd usually be 25 or 35 cents left over. And I could buy myself a pack of Topps baseball cards or football, whatever was there, usually baseball though. And so that's mainly what I collected when I was younger. But I did get into comic books, none of which, by the way, I still have. This is not original. Nothing in my collection is original from when I was younger. All of the comic books, all the cards are long since gone somewhere, lost in moves or misplaced, or who knows what happened. When I went in the Army and then came back, they were all gone. So who knows what happened there, but it is what it is. But that's the first one I remember reading. Loved Micronauts. Just thought it was a brilliant story. Had no idea when I first picked it up that it was based on a licensed toy. Came to find out later that it was. Always wanted some, but never had the opportunity to get any at that point in time.
What was it about that comic? Do you remember what it was about that comic that made you think, "Oh, this is the one I want to get"?
I think the cover probably drew me in, and at the grocery store they didn't have a lot of comics to begin with, so it's not like an LCS now where there's a wall of 50 or 60. There were probably about 6 or 7 comic books along with all the magazines in the magazine section at the grocery store. It's not like a spinner rack. It was just where all the magazines were at. And I think that one looked the most interesting to me. And so that's when I picked it up, and I just fell in love with it in that first issue. I think it was really well written. Mantlo gets a lot of criticism sometimes. I think justifiably so in certain areas. He seems rushed in his writing, but he was probably the penultimate world builder in the early days of Marvel when it came to licensed properties. And I think he pretty much kind of laid out the blueprint of how to do it and do it properly.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing Micronaut comics. I saw them eventually, but I had Micronaut toys for a bit, but it was all the same. And then when I read the Micronaut comics, it was like showing all these different characters. And I'm like, no, the only one I ever see, they never seem to have it in the comic book. It was just like a clear, see-through guy. And I'm like, he didn't seem to have a counterpart in the comic that I could see. They had all these bugs and is someone called Acro-Year or something?
Yep, Acro-Year, yes.
Acroyer, that's how you pronounce it. Okay, yeah. And was there a lady Acroyer as well? Or
yeah, I don't know that's how it's pronounced, but that's how I always pronounce it. Yeah. He was a robot warrior, not a robot, but he was a warrior prince from another planet. And he had his girlfriend or his, I think, wife, who later joined him in his adventures with the rest of the Micronauts. But he always had that dichotomy of doing what was responsible to protect his home planet and his people, while trying to balance that with continuing the mission, what was good for the team and the overall microverse. But yeah, so these started out as big, like 12-inch toys, robotic toys, and their key was, I think, that they could be interchanged. They were magnetic, and so you could pull off limbs and put it with one, and take its limbs and put it with another one, and so it was the playability factor where you could create new creations that I think really drew people to it. And then there was a big, I think the oil crunch during the 70s made plastics more and more expensive. And so this Japanese toy manufacturer said, well, let's shrink them down and make them smaller. That way we don't have to charge more money, but we don't lose money at the same time. And so I think that's where the concept of the microverse kind of came from.
Okay. Yeah, because I only ever saw the small ones, and there was all just different colours, but there was no like different figures or anything like that. But yeah, it was a long time ago I had them. And the other one is like Rom. I never even realised Rom was actually a toy line. I read a few Rom comics, not too many, but a few. And I thought they were quite good, actually. I think he was quite a good character, and like he had a fairly good story as well. But I never knew he was a toy.
Bill Mantlo did those too, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
For Micronauts, Mego got the license. Mego that made like the early, Batman and Robin and all those very collectible figures. They got the license for Micronauts, and they renamed it. I can't remember what the Japanese name was, but they're the ones who worked with the Japanese toy company and Marvel to kind of create this world.
So they didn't have like free reign to make up whatever you wanted. They had to talk to the company to come to a consensus of what the story was going to be.
Initially, after a while, they did have free reign, and Marvel created quite a few of the characters that didn't originally exist in the toy line.
All right, fair enough, cool. I can't think of anything else to talk about that. Because you got a toy, didn't you? Your wife bought you a toy, didn't she? Like quite a while later.
She did, yeah.
I think I might have had that one. It looked familiar to me, but I had another one as well. It was like a tank track treads, and it had like a long sort of column that the guy used to sit in on like a high chair kind of thing. But that was ages ago. And bloody hell, must have been before I was 10 years old, I'm sure.
Right. It had several characters and vehicles. The one I have, I think, is a character within a vehicle. And they had Baron Karza, who was a big one. He was the big baddie. This guy right up here. He's the one that was responsible for creating the body banks and everything else, and forcing them to go on their quest to try to depose him.
How long did it run for? Do you know how many issues it ran for?
Oh, gosh, I'd have to look. Maybe 70 some. I have to look. I have every one of them and all the annuals. And then there were 2 or 3 subsequent series, at least one through Image, I think one through Devil's Due. where they had got the license, and they weren't nearly as successful with those runs. But the original Marvel one lasted quite a while.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising sometimes that the comics seem to outlast the toy line by like quite some time, and in quite a few like it's weird how they don't sort of the comic you think would feed the interest in the toys and keep the toys sustainable. But I suppose I don't know, maybe people reading the comics aren't also buying the toys. I suppose is that the same with you?
Yeah, that was the case with me, and same with like G.I. Joe. I watched the cartoon every now and then. Never really bought the toys. Oh, there you go. So Jackson said 1 through 59.
Right.
Same with what is it? ROM. That series certainly outlasted the toy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it does in some cases creates a whole new world, and then at some point, toys have a very finite life cycle. Usually about 4 to 6 years before, if they don't adjust and change enough, then people kind of move on to the next thing. Well, if the comic is successful, there's no reason to kind of stop it along with the production of the toy. So they'll just keep it going and sever that connection between the two.
If it's selling, you might as well. Remember the ROM, the big enemies, the Dire-Wrath were really quite horrible for a kid's toy line.
You're right, they were.
The acid-like drill tongues that would suck people's brains out and then take on their appearance. It's
Loved it.
Yeah, they were nasty though, weren't they? Really nasty.
They were, yeah. And I think almost all of the backstory was fleshed out by Marvel. It really didn't have a whole lot of story that came with the toy line itself. There's no accompanying cartoon or anything like that. And I think they looked to Marvel to kind of create that excitement by creating a world and a backstory that would drive the kids to go and want to purchase the figures.
Do you know if the toy line even had the Dire-Wraths in the toy line?
I don't know if it had them. Yeah, I don't know that it did. I certainly don't think it had any play sets. And that's like the pinnacle of what all the toy lines want to get to. If you can get to a Castle Grayskull or a Snake Mountain like in He-Man, that's where the real money was at. I don't think ROM really got to that point.
Yeah. Right. Anything else you want to say about that comic, or you want to move on to your next one?
Nope, we can move on to the next one. So the next one is actually two. And there's nothing particularly special about the comics, but I think, as far as I can remember, it was the first time I ever got comics signed by the creators. And this was at Amazing Arizona Comic Con, which was in Mesa, Arizona. And this must have been 11 or 12 years ago, maybe. That convention no longer exists because they moved to Phoenix. And I think Phoenix Comic Con felt kind of threatened by them and did everything they could to drive them out of town, in which they succeeded. So now they're in Las Vegas and some other places, but they're not in Phoenix anymore. But I got this one signed by Jeff Loeb right up there. And I'm not like Slim Comics. I mean, he's huge with signatures.
Right.
Never really been my thing. Not too big on it, but I thought that's pretty cool. And what I really liked about this comic convention compared to Phoenix Comic Con was this was almost all comics. And Phoenix Comic Con is so big that it's like pop culture, manga, anime, and all this stuff that really doesn't interest me. And comics seems to increasingly become a smaller and smaller part of the overall footprint of the convention. I got this one signed there as well by Todd McFarlane. So that's what was kind of cool. I got to meet both of them. They were both really, really cool, really nice, personable. It was small at the time, maybe 5,000-6,000 people. That one eventually grew to maybe 25,000 to 35,000 before they moved on. And Phoenix Comic Con, I mean, that's been 80 to 100,000 the last few years that it's been in operation. But like I said, so much of that is video games and cosplay and all these other things that aren't necessarily comic related that I kind of like the personal comic related nature of the amazing Arizona Comic Con.
So I've been to one con in my life. It just seems like people dress up as superheroes, but they don't want to buy the comics that the superheroes are in. It seems it's kind of transcended the comic books, which is a bit strange. But yeah. I've started going to in London. They have a comic mart rather than a comic con. It's a comic mart. It's just basically sellers. So there's nothing but comic stalls. And there's like a room of Funko Pops in the back for people who like those kind of things. But it's just like comics and lots of cheap ones as well. So that's where I go to.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. Yeah. What I liked about, and I did during these times, like I said, I used to collect a lot of trades. That was kind of my preferred method of consuming the stories, because it seemed more economical, right, to buy a $10 trade of 6 or 7 issues than try to buy the individual issues. So I would usually get the trade signed, because I'd usually buy them from the creators. They'd say, "You want me to sign it?" I'm like, "Sure, whatever." So I don't have a lot of comic books that are signed. Most of them, my signatures would be on the trade paperback books. And that's mainly what I would pick up at comic book conventions. I'd get original art sometimes, and I probably have like 30 or so pages just over the years from picking them up. You talk to somebody and establish a relationship with them. You see them the next year and the next year, and pretty soon they're like, "Hey, I'll catch you a deal on this." And like, well, what the heck? Why not? But to me, that was the fun, was going and meeting the creators. And the best parts was when they would have panels. So they'd have a Chew panel with John Layman, or they would have a Hellboy panel with Mike Mignola, or they'd have a panel about Silver Age Batman with Neil Adams. And you'd get to go and just listen to the creators talk, ask them questions. To me, that was the best part of the comic conventions. And slowly but surely throughout the years, those panels became less and less frequent, and panels on how to create cosplay costumes or voice actors for anime, those ones became more and more prominent. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, right? If that's where your audience is, that's just not me. That's not something I was interested in.
They need to sort of create a new load of comic cons, like go back to the old style. Just say, like, you have your comic cons of everything, and we just start our smaller comic cons again, just for comic buyers who want to talk about comic books.
I think so.
Yeah, like an underground circuit of comic cons, putting the comic back into comic cons, kind of thing.
Hey, you keep your expenses in check, and I think that there's a business model for that.
Yeah. Anyone out there wants to do it, feel free.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not necessarily your man to do it, but I think that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of like, I say, I've only ever been to one con, and I'm a very shy person, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't even go to someone and ask them to sign me anything. I'm not going to go talk to anybody. I'm like, unless I know people, I just can't talk to them. So I'll probably be no point in me going to a con trying to get books signed, because I just probably wouldn't bother.
I think most of us that collect are probably introverted by nature. For me, I've been in like sales gigs before and stuff. So for me, it's easy to say, well, you just need to put on this persona, and you need to be this type of person in this certain situation. So it's never been too difficult for me, although it's not necessarily the most comfortable thing.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, anything else you want to add on those comics?
No, sir.
Okay, so that's a bit of con memory. So, are you looking forward to the cons coming back?
I think a couple years, 2 years ago, they raised the prices. And I'd always gone all 4 days for 15 years, how long it had been. And I'd say, I'll just go one day. And I think to me, that kind of signified that it really isn't that important to me. If it's out there, Phoenix Comic Con is the only one I'll go to. I never went to Tucson Comic Con, which is about 2 to 2.5 hours south of Phoenix, and Tucson, obviously. I've never been to anything outside of the state. So Phoenix and Amazing Arizona, when it was in, those are the only ones I'd ever been to. So it's just not that important to me. San Diego Comic Con, I can't even imagine that. I don't like people that much to begin with.
Exactly.
But to be in a crush of people, that's not in my comfort zone. And if I'm not having fun, then what am I doing there? So I don't know that I'd ever go to something like that.
No, it's too big, isn't it? It's like, Yeah, I think I'm a martyr to my feet, so my feet hurt just thinking about walking around that bigger place. You know what I mean? But
and I heard stories about waiting an hour and a half in line to get into a panel, and I'm too old for that. Let the kids do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can watch the panel online. They normally stream it online nowadays anyway, a lot of that stuff. Or
That's
be on
exactly
YouTube
right.
in a couple of months.
Yeah.
All right, then let's move on to your third comic book related memory.
Let me shout out this illustrious chat that we have, and they all tuned in, I think, just to hear the champion. If you guys haven't had a chance to see it yesterday, it was a bloodbath. In honor of Halloween, I destroyed the competition on Cover Slingers. I do have a headache from all the partying, the hard partying that I did afterwards. But they were carrying me through the streets. It was quite a big deal. But we've got the Jackson Roy Kirk, who's talking about, he says, "Oh my, this guy again." He's talking about Gray Man, I think there. And we've got
Metarod, the comics only cons.
We got Richard, Ray, how are you? Sly, Tim, comic collector, Alex, who did a cool video on his top 10 favorite Halloween related or horror related movies.
The movies. I think I saw someone did a 10 related. It was Mark Spector did his 10 top Halloween comics. I think I saw the other day.
Yeah, he did movies.
Check that out.
Who else? I think we covered everyone. Oh, we got Bubsy in here. Karloff the Uncanny. That's pretty good.
And don't forget, all you people, if you want to join us on Cover Slingers sometime, hit me up on Instagram, looking for guests on Cover Slingers, and also people to come in and chat with me about your 5 of your comic book memories. Obviously, we've got more than 5, but
and Animalia Comics.
Yeah, I'm always a bit tricky about pronouncing that one.
Yeah, that's a toughie. It's a tongue
twister.
Oh yeah, that's right. Richard from Zoe and Noodles, he's actually in Tucson. I heard the Tucson Comic-Con was really good. But I haven't been to Tucson a whole lot. So it's a haul for me, and usually there's nothing that would bring me there other than I'm going through Tucson to get to Mexico or something like that.
So they're kind of sparse. Do you have to drive over the Lemon Mountains to get to Tucson?
No.
Are you impressed with my knowledge of local geography?
Yes, that is pretty good. Yeah, Tucson does have some. Oh yeah, you know what? I went to Tucson once when I was in high school. They have, is it the Lowell Observatory or something there?
Right. Okay, I've heard of that.
Right. That was pretty fascinating. Cool. But I don't know. Tucson's a big city. It's got over 1 million people, but it's just nothing that I've ever said, "Oh, I got to go to Tucson for this."
Isn't it good for astronomy? Because is it astrology? I can never get too confused. But because of the desert sky, it's not so much overcast and the light and that, and they can see the stars a lot better from
correct. There's not so much light pollution.
Yeah.
Plus, there are certain sections that are in the mountains. So higher elevation to get past a lot of that light as well. Yep.
Cool.
All right. So the next one I have is 3 books. These are the first, although they're beat up, I think I got them for like $1.50 to $2 a piece. These are the first original EC books I ever got. They're all 3 war books. So this coverless.
Yeah.
I'd have to look, but I think this is probably Frontline Combat. And this one's got half the cover.
It's a shame the covers are missing, but you get them for a better price, I suppose, or an easier to manage
exactly.
price. Yeah.
And it was all still readable. So that was the main thing to me. I just wanted to read them.
So I take it the top covers are just torn off because they've been sent or supposed to have been sent back, or they were ones that didn't sell.
That's probably what happened. Yes. I don't know that. I got them in an auction. But if I were a betting man, I would bet that that's why. That they didn't sell. So they said, well, we needed proof that they didn't sell. And usually they would throw away the book after having done that. But these 3 were saved. And at $1.50 a piece, reprints from Russ Cochran are like $2.50, sometimes $4 a piece. So I said, if I can get the original cheaper than the reprint, Why not?
And they've got the history there, and they've taken their knocks over the years. That kind of adds a certain element of interest to them, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it adds character to them, and you can wonder with a certain level of curiosity which hands they've been through, what type of life they've lived, where were they originally, were they traded from child to child, or did an adult buy them and keep them in a closet for 20, 30, 40 years? Who knows? It is fun to kind of ponder what journey they've taken,
Especially when they've got someone's written their name on inside quite often you see the name written inside the top margin or something like that. And you think, wonder what happened to this person, what happened in their lives, how long ago did they sell it, or did they die and their family have sold it on or something like that. It's always kind of, you're never going to know, of course. I had this kind of stupid idea once, maybe have like a library kind of plate inside a comic, so you can put who owned it, and when it passed on to the next person, they could put their name in it as who owned it. Sure. I don't know, that would be of any interest to anybody, but it was just like it's like a little flight of fancy I had for a second. It was like, that's not me. That wouldn't catch on. That's just a stupid idea. But
I don't think so. I think it's a neat idea. I think it becomes neater, obviously, the longer it is in the future. If it was from if 60, 70 years from now someone discovered that, I think that would have a whole different meaning than it would maybe in a year or two. But those things have to start at some point to have a lot of value later on, Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
Oftentimes you'll get those free autographs with those golden age books where some kid wrote their name on it, right? Yeah,
that's true. That was, it'd be cool if you managed to get one from someone who actually was famous, or like if you picked up a comic book from someone who actually went on to write comic books. And
absolutely.
I'm sure there must be some knocking around somewhere. But,
there are, and I know even in particular to EC, what is his name? I think what's the EC Comic Club? The guy, I'd have to find his channel again. He doesn't put out as much content as I like, but it's probably the world's biggest EC comic collector. He has some that have provenance that he purchased the artist's personal copies from them.
Oh, right. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty smart. Another thing that I like with comic books and the history of them is like when you read a comic that's like trying to predict the future, and it's now like well in the past. It's like, well, where are the flying cities that you promised in the year 2000? Yep. And I picked up a comic the other day, and it was like the year 3001 or something like that. I was thinking to myself, imagine in the year 3001, someone actually reads this comic like it's from like over 1,000 years ago or whatever. It's like, wow.
Especially sci-fi, right?
Yeah,
sci-fi comic books and novels. That's so fantastic about them. Or you look at something like Dick Tracy, where he had his watch that he would talk into, and ultimately that came to pass, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's funny how they predict strange things. Like I remember, I think I mentioned this in my blog. It was an old radio show, and it was talking about rocket ships and all that kind of thing. And they had rocket ships, but they made a time capsule. But they actually use like a wax cylinder or a record as because obviously they hadn't realised there's going to be digital stuff by this time, and it was like really old technology.
It is fun because they're stretching their imagination, but within the confines of their understanding at that particular point in time, right?
Yeah. And the things that change, they don't think about. They don't think about it. Yeah. It's interesting.
Hey, Sean, good to see you, sir. Thanks for stopping by. But these are just excellent reads. Two-Fisted Tales and the War Companion title, Frontline Combat. To me, for my money, other than maybe Blazing Combat, they're the best written war titles of any comic books ever.
I don't know if I've ever read any of those. So that's Korean War, so that's the 50s then, isn't it? Sometime in the 50s.
Right, yeah. Frontline Combat was almost entirely, or it was entirely war, and most of it was about the Korean conflict. And then the titles really started to lose steam after the ceasefire.
Right.
And so Two-Fisted Tales was mainly war, but they had they had boxing, cowboys and Indians type thing. Some more adventure type stories, and they they went on a little bit longer than Frontline Combat did.
Talking of like history and stuff, do they have letters pages? Do you ever read the old letters from
Mm-hmm.
kids?
Yep, absolutely.
They're always interested, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they were great. I really like this. I like that. Or in this particular case, you'd get a lot of military veterans or sometimes active duty who would try to tighten them up on this or that. You didn't get this right, or you didn't get that right. It didn't happen too often because Harvey Kurtzman was a stickler for trying to get every detail right, which is why the artists really didn't like working with him too often, and why he only had, for the most part, 3 comic books that he edited, the 2 war titles and then Mad comic book, because he took so much time with every issue, while Feldstein gave a whole lot of creative freedom to the artists, even though he wrote almost every story.
I remember reading an old, I think from 1969, one of my birthday books maybe, it was like a girl had written into the letters page talking about her brother being in Vietnam, and I was like, oh wow, that's so kind of powerful sort of history. I thought, I wonder what happened. Did he come back home safely and that kind of thing? You know, it's like, whoa, gives you a chill.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a slice of life from that particular point in time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anyway, what's the next one you want to talk about? Unless you've got any other points you want to add about that?
Nope. Here is the next one, sir. This is my Conan #1.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
The reason I like this one, well, obviously I'm a big fan of Conan, but this was an anniversary gift from Mrs. Musings, so that's what makes it extra special. I think at some point years ago, she knew that I'd eventually become a champion of some sort. She didn't know it'd be for cover slingers, but she knew she was with a winner, and she hitched her coattails to me, and this was
full screen on you.
a great gift. So very excited that you got that for me.
I hope you're not planning on retiring now that you're champion, like, and resting on your laurels as undefeated or anything like that, because we've still got plenty more covers to show.
That's right. Well, I'm coming strong on Saturday with my jungle covers. You better believe that.
So what about Conan then? When did you first discover him? Did you discover him when you was a kid, when he first came out, or?
I've read, most of my reading has been like just traditional books, novels, a lot of historic treatises and novels as well. I'm a huge history buff, particularly around World War II and the Civil War, but I had read all the Conan books prior to discovering them in comic book form. But what really, and I'd always been a fan of the original Conan run, but what really got me into Conan was the Savage Sword of Conan. And I read all of those through the Dark Horse trade paperback reprints. I think there's 23 or 26 of those. And I just thought they were spectacular. Incredible art, wonderful stories. And those don't even include, like, from the original magazines, like the Solomon Kane stories, the Cole stories, ones that would also be in there. I read most of those separately in other trades. But I just think, for my money, Savage Sword is the greatest title ever created in comics. I enjoy the stories that much. So that's probably what really sold me on Conan in particular, on that title. And I've shifted over the last 5 years, I think, toward that a little bit more, plus toward more, I think, Golden Age, pre-code horror, things like that. I still love the superhero stuff, and I still want to put together my little 1 through 20 or 1 through N number runs of certain titles, but some of my focus has changed into some different areas, so it may take a bit longer on those.
It's never ending, isn't it?
It really isn't. Yeah. Much to the chagrin of family members. Yes.
Yeah, it's terrible. I've got listed and then I find another one I didn't know I wanted, and suddenly I want it, and it's like, oh man, like Conan. I never read any Conan, although I like the film. I probably read a book or two as well when I was younger. But I got an AOK from Fiverr's Revenge, and it was like, oh man, now I've got to buy the whole bloody run.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if I ever manage it because they get a bit pricey, don't they? But you know, you just keep on trying. If it happens, it happens. Yeah, it's a good sickness though. It's not like you know, at least you've got something to show for it, and we're a bit
absolutely. You know, and really, that's the way I've always kind of thought about it. Whether it's coins, and I know Richard collects coins as well. I have a couple coins, some silver, a couple little gold ones. I have some old like Roman coins as well. But whether it's like coins, stamps, not so much anymore. Hey Gomez, how are you, broski? Yeah, stamps are a tough one nowadays. They just don't hold a lot of value. But whether it's sports cards, coins, antiques, collectibles, if there's something that you can make a hobby of that has some semblance of inherent value at some point in the future, then I think it's a little bit easier to justify, and I think it becomes less of a vice. Because in some cases, it can become an alternative investment. So you could say, well, I'm going to buy 10 shares of this company in the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange with an expected appreciation of 10 to 15% over, let's say, 15 years. Or you can say, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to buy a, let's just say, for sake of argument, Fantastic Four #1 in this particular grade. And there's a very strong possibility that latter investment outperforms the former investment, if you just want to talk about from investment purposes. So I know that I say collect how you want, and I know a lot of people, especially the old schoolers, don't like to slab comic books. To me, I love it. I have a lot, right? I have a lot of slab books, probably close to 1,000. Between ones I'm selling in my sell pile and ones that I'm keeping. But other than, I think it makes them more presentable, more substantial. I think it's easier to protect them. Other than all those reasons, for me, the biggest reason I'll always do it is because at some point, as much as I love to discover that elixir vitae from Dr. Fu Manchu, I will die. I will pass away. And my heirs will be stuck with getting probably taken advantage of like you wouldn't believe on the value of their books through the inscrutable people in this hobby that see that Conan #1 and say, oh, that's beat up. I'll give you $5-10 on it. They don't know. They don't know how to trade. Right? I won't be there to say that person's a charlatan. So this gives them some semblance, at least for the bigger books, of being able to, above the board, get close to the value of what they're worth. And to me, that's the big thing. I think if you have big boy books like a 181, anything that's worth several $100s or more, I think you owe it to your heirs, unless you're not going to leave it to anyone, to get those graded, protected. That way, they're liquid, they're somewhat sellable for them, and they won't be taken advantage of.
I'm kind of worried about how long the value of comics is going to last, though, because there's less and less people getting into comic books, and all the people who are collecting comic books are getting old now. So as we start dying off, there's going to be less demand, and so they're going to be able to buy them for cheaper.
Right, and I think the value of the comic books going forward won't be as dependent upon how many people are reading comics as they will be dependent upon how successful the other media franchises are for them. Movies, television shows, things like that. I think that's what will continue to drive the value of the comic books, because they originally will be the source material for all these popular things. I think in the 30 to 40 years, I think that our comic book mythology will be in large part replaced. This is just my thoughts. Will be replaced by video game mythology. I think that's where all the kids are gravitating to, and I think those are the characters and the stories that they're going to carry forward with and cherish when they get older. It just feels like a groundswell of shift in attention from reading comic books to playing video games and there's more and more emphasis put on creating these worlds, building these worlds and storylines within video games. Matter of fact, you get a lot of comic book writers that switch over and go to writing for video games, and I just think that that's going to be the new mythology that ultimately replaces comic books.
Oh, quite possibly. We shall see, I suppose. We shall see.
Yeah.
Or maybe our relatives in the future, our ancestors will see, probably.
Yeah, hopefully I won't live to see that.
Yeah. I don't think that the stories are as good in like video games, though. I don't think the character has got the longevity. I don't think Pac-Man's got the longevity as Batman, you know, that kind of thing.
No, I think it's more of the Master Chief from Halo, which Greg just went as him for Halloween. I think it's that big, strong guy with the axe in a God of War or something like that. I mean, I don't know video games very well, but you just see them over and over, and some people are just
is he Kratos
fascinated.
Kratos or Kronos? I can't remember. It might be Kratos. I can't remember now. That guy's name.
It could be, yeah. But yeah, they're becoming exceedingly complex in the storylines, according to people that play video games that I talk to. Like I said, I'm coming from a point of ignorance, because if it's much past the Sega 60, what is it, Nintendo 64, then it's way over my head. But they're becoming pretty sophisticated in the stories they tell in this.
Right. I'm just going to shout out to Splash Page Comics, Mr. White Gloves. I saw him on a stream with Mr. G. It was very entertaining. So if anyone wants to catch up with that, they were talking to California Blend, is it, about our art? And,
right.
Yeah, check that out. It was amusing and informative. Right. So number 5, there's your last one now, isn't it? That was number 4, wasn't it? I can't even keep track.
That was 4. I understand. I'm so incredibly enrapturing that you lose track easily. Yes, this is number 5.
We'll go with that. We'll go with what you said.
And it is this one, this stinker right here.
Why is it a stinker? It's only 6.5.
Yes, Black Panther number 14. So this is a memorable one for me for a couple reasons. One good, one bad. So the first one is it's a good reminder of me, or to me, I'm sorry, to always make sure to carefully inspect the entire book if I'm going to send it in to be graded. Because if you look on the front, this thing is got tight corners, just gorgeous. But then you look on the back, and you see that water damage right there, and it goes.
Oh, let me put you in big screen actually. So I'm trying to look at it, and I've got you in small screen.
Yeah, it starts right there, goes all the way up.
Oh man! Oh yeah, I see it.
All water damage.
Oh man, how did you miss that?
I don't think I looked at the back of this one, or if I did, I just glanced at it.
Yeah.
That water damage and foxing are two things that CGC will crucify you for on grades. And so that's what took something that looked from the front like a 9.4 down to a 6.5. So it's a nice reminder that you need to not be stupid, and you need to make sure you inspect the entire book, front and back, and in between, if you're going to send it off to be graded. It's also a special book to me because this was part of the first and only time I've ever sent books into CGC to be graded personally. Right? I've told this story before, like 17, 18 years ago. I bought some books at a local comic book shop, and through them sent 6 into CGC. You had to fill out paperwork. You couldn't buy a membership. There were a couple people in each state, I guess, or just throughout the country who had licenses to work with CGC. And so you'd have to send them through these people. And so a couple months later, they called me back and said, "Your books are here." I said, "Okay." 3 of them, half of them were in the grades I wanted, half weren't. But it wasn't until, when was that? A few months ago, about, I guess, 6 months ago, when I actually got a CGC membership and sent in a batch of 20 books. And this was one of the 20. And that was probably, those 2 videos I made were probably the most fun videos I'd ever made. It was just incredible. It's super exciting when you see something as raw and you predict, you say, I think it's going to be this, and you send it and they come back. It was just so much fun. I'd love to do it again, but it's not free.
No, that's a good point, because you and your wife both looked at them, didn't they? So your wife missed the damage on the back as well then, did she?
I probably looked at them initially and then put them in a bag and board with a couple of them, and that would have been one of them. But yeah, she missed it as well.
Right, yeah, I did see that. That's the thing. I've never bothered to like get anything slapped myself, because I like to be able to read my comics. But now I know they've got some that are worth a bit of money, and it's like I feel too nervous to kind of read them anyway. So it's like,
right.
I should get them slabbed for my partner when I go, if I go before or nephews, whoever's going to take over when I'm gone. But I just look at it as being too expensive. It's like, well, that's like 50 quid I could spend on another comic. So I'd rather spend it on new comics than on getting plastic prisons or plastic coffins, the ones I've already got.
There's definitely an opportunity cost involved, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think so many people, and that's kind of where I live in the auction world, is taking advantage of taking advantage of situations where people slab comics that probably weren't worth getting slabbed.
Right.
A lot of filler books, books that maybe are bronze or copper that should be a 9.6 or 9.8 to be worth the cost and time of getting slabbed, but came back a 9.2 or a 9.4, and they sell well under value. I'll pick those up 5-10 years from now. I'll sell them at 3 or 4 times the profit. And I've done that. I mean, I probably sold maybe 200 graded books over the last 10 years. Stuff that I picked up in 1998, 2000. Well, not 1998, but in like 2001, 2002, right after comics started getting slabbed, that I said, I'm not in any hurry. I just held on to them and was able to make a decent profit, and then put that back into a book that I did want to get.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I'm too lazy though. I've got comics, I've got dabbles and stuff that I've tried to sell. I made up a batch of blinking boxes to try, and literally I sold one of them. So that was my last attempt to ever bother. Basically, I've still got 29 boxes knocking around the house actually. So that's annoying.
I've never sold a raw comic ever.
No.
Never. But it's all been because you can't argue with this. Right, there's nobody who's going to contact me and say, "Hey, you know what? That was a very fine minus, not a very fine plus." It is what it is, and to me, that's why graded comics have taken off, because it's removed that barrier. Now I can buy a comic from someone in London without any concerns about the condition of it. It's agreed upon. This third party said it's this grade. Do you want it or not? There's no haggling back and forth. There's no one saying filing a grievance because you claimed it was this grade and they feel it was this grade, because it's all subjective. You both say, we're empowering this third-party company to determine that this is the grade for it, and you can have your transaction more trouble-free than you could previously. So it's so much easier for me to sell graded comics. I've never sold raw comics before. I'll have to. I have so many comics. I've got to get rid of some.
Yeah, so that's another thing with me, is I've never even thought about grade of comics. I've never been one to look at a comic and go, that's got a little snack there, a little bit there. I just buy comics and like never even cared about them being, any of the grading systems. I never even really heard about it. I just like buy the comics and like, I don't know. Obviously, I'm living in my own little bubble and didn't know about all this kind of stuff. But yeah, to me, I've never sort of worried about near mint or bloody well 9.8 or whatever. I just want to have the comics, and quite often I think I take advantage of that now. So I just say to people, just give me your worst nick ones, I'll buy them. As long as I've got the comic, I'm happy.
Right, and that's what I did for so many years with trade paperbacks.
Yeah,
and quite honestly, that came back to bite me. Right, so now I probably have between 800 and 1,000 trade paperbacks that aren't worth a whole lot. Whereas if I had bought the original comics, I would have gotten the same reading pleasure out of it. There's so much out there to read. I've never found more than maybe 10 series that I'm compelled to go back and reread because, again, opportunity cost. If I'm rereading this, I'm not reading any of these thousands of series that are probably equally as good. So now I've got this book, these trade paperbacks sitting on the shelf that are worth probably a fraction of cover price. Whereas had I bought the original comics themselves, and because in a lot of cases they're independents, and slab that #1 Chew or slab that #1 Transmetropolitan, or you can go on down the line, then I would have gotten multiples of my investment back, and I still would have gotten to enjoy the same read.
Yeah, that's the thing. I used to do that as well. I like Christmas and birthdays. So what can I get? And I just look at eBay or Amazon for trades, and so I get. Yeah, and it's like I never thought to myself like, oh, I like this comic a lot. I should go and try and buy the comic book, especially #1. It's obviously
I never did either. Yeah.
So I've got all the ones that I've got, like The Boys and Invincible and Hey the Last Man and stuff like that. I only ever bought trade and Chew, and I never bought trade. Never thought to go out and see if I could get #1 while because I think it's going to be hot in a few years' time. It's never occurred to me.
Yeah, that's the same way, the same exact ones too. Why the Last Man, The Boys, Walking Dead. Yeah, I'm like, why would I get the comics when I can get this big compendium for so much less? And there you go.
It's like the Hellblazer as well. I started off with Hellblazer in the trades, and then I started collecting it from about 30 or something. I never thought to go and get I managed to get them all now. I've literally just got all the whole Hellblazer first series, but I think not as expensive as I thought it was in the end. #1, I managed to get a 50% sale as well, and it had a scuff on the blinking cover, so it wasn't in the greatest nick. But I've got the full series now, so that'll do.
What's the first appearance? Is that Swamp Thing 37?
Yeah,
first Constantine.
Yeah, something like that. It's definitely a Swamp Thing, but I don't know what number it is.
I think it's 37. It's like a yellow cover, mainly yellow cover. I think Tim, the comic collector, I think he's working on a Hellblazer run as well.
Yeah, I'd like to get that one day. It's just the first appearance. There's so many characters that you want to get. That's another thing. I never really was a key collector. I only discovered the keys were even a thing when I started doing videos on YouTube. And so never mind. Yeah, you can't go back, can you, and change what you did years ago?
Yeah. I mean, that would be nice, but it's the same thing. And I distinctly remember being at John Layman's table, where he's got numbers 1 through 3 of Chew, a set. I'm like, and they're like $3 a piece. I'm like, why would I pay $15 when I can buy that? for $9 I can buy that trade paperback of 1 through 5. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Good luck with that. And whoever bought that has like a $300, $400 #1 copy. So what are you gonna do? You have nothing you can do to change it except say, well, at least I enjoyed the stories, and that's what was always important to me. The read.
Saga's another one that I started buying.
I bought that one. Yep, same thing. Saga, like you said, Why the Last Man, DMZ,
Preacher as well.
What was that one? Ex Machina.
Oh right, yeah.
V for Vendetta. I actually did buy the floppies on that one. Fortunately, Fear Agent. I could just go on and on. Sweet Tooth. How many that are worth money now? 30 Days of Night. That I bought the trades for, but what are you gonna do? Oh well.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Then we've had all 5 of your comic book memories. You got anything else coming up on your channel you want to share with everyone?
Next Saturday, I will be defending my title on your channel at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's probably 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure on that, but hopefully you guys will come a little bit better prepared, because it was a slaughterhouse on yesterday. But it's going to be jungle covers, and so I'm excited about it.
There was nothing but Hellboy. You blind applause that. And Just grease them up with some Hellboy covers or something like that.
Much like a battle plan, I masterly crafted that whole scenario of covers there.
Yeah, never mind. Anyway, yes.
And I got Monday, Wednesday, Friday videos dropping. The one on Wednesday, I would encourage you to check out. It is another desert unboxing. I seem to get a lot of positive feedback on those. So that will be the one that drops on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Cheers for tuning in, everyone. Yeah. Bub says that I was handing out in 10s like candy. I thought when I got a 10 on that first Elvira, I thought that's it. She was just throwing them out like there was news.
She recognizes quality when she sees it.
Then. Cheers for coming. And anyone wants to come and hang out with me sometime and share 5 of your comic book memories, just hit me up on Instagram. Anyone from the comic community, I'm interested in talking to everyone at some point. Anyway, cheers for coming on.
Bye, all.
Bye, everybody.